What if I told you that Atlantis, El Dorado, Shangri-La weren't just fantasies dreamed up by ancient storytellers? What if these legendary lost worlds were actually based on real places that once existed? Places that were so magnificent, so advanced, or so mysterious that when they vanished, humanity couldn't let them go. We turned them into myths, into legends, into obsessions that have driven explorers mad for thousands of years. Today, we're uncovering the 7 real locations that inspired history's most famous legends. And I'm warning you right now, some of these answers are going to completely change how you see ancient history. Let's begin with the one that started it all. Atlantis. The name alone conjures images of gleaming towers, advanced technology, and a civilization that supposedly vanished beneath the waves in a single catastrophic day and night. But here's what most people don't know. Plato, the Greek philosopher who first described Atlantis around 360 BCE, never claimed it was fiction. He presented it as historical fact, passed down through Egyptian priests to the Athenian statesman Solon. So where was the real Atlantis? The answer might be Santorini, or as the ancient Greeks called it, Thera. Around 1600 BCE, one of the most violent volcanic eruptions in human history literally tore this island apart. The Minoan civilization that lived there was incredibly advanced for the Bronze Age. They had multi-story buildings, sophisticated plumbing, vibrant frescoes, and a naval empire that controlled the Aegean Sea. When the volcano exploded, it generated tsunamis over 100 feet high. The eruption was so massive, it likely inspired flood myths across the Mediterranean. Entire cities were buried under volcanic ash, preserved like a Bronze Age Pompeii. The Minoans even match Plato's description: a naval power, skilled engineers, worshippers of bulls, and yes, they disappeared suddenly from the historical record. But here's where it gets interesting. Recent archaeological discoveries have found Minoan artifacts depicting advanced metallurgy, complex trade networks reaching Africa and the Near East, and architectural techniques that wouldn't be seen again for centuries. The civilization that vanished beneath ash and waves was real. The legend of Atlantis was born from its ashes. And it makes you wonder, what else have we dismissed as myth that's actually memory? Let's talk about gold. Specifically, a legend that cost thousands of lives and fueled the Spanish conquest of South America, El Dorado, the city of gold. Except El Dorado wasn't originally a city at all, it was a man. The term El Dorado means the golden one, and it referred to a ritual performed by the Muisca people in what is now Colombia. During coronation ceremonies, the new chief would cover himself in gold dust, then paddle out onto Lake Guatavita and throw golden offerings into the water. Spanish conquistadors heard these stories in the 1530s and went absolutely insane. They transformed a ritual into a city, a ceremony into an empire, and they spent the next 2 centuries slaughtering indigenous peoples and destroying entire ecosystems, searching for something that never existed the way they imagined it. But here's the twist. Lake Guatavita is real. The ritual was real, and the lake absolutely contains gold. In 1965, the Colombian government drained part of the lake and found hundreds of golden artifacts. Ground-penetrating radar suggests there may be tons more buried in the sediment. The Muisca weren't lying. They really did throw fortunes into that water. And it wasn't just Lake Guatavita. The Muisca Confederation had incredible goldsmiths whose work was so refined that when the Spanish first saw it, they couldn't believe indigenous people had created it. Museums today display Muisca gold pieces that demonstrate techniques European metalsmiths hadn't mastered yet. The tragedy of El Dorado isn't that it didn't exist. It's that the real golden culture was destroyed by people chasing a fantasy version of it. The conquistadors were standing in El Dorado the entire time. They just couldn't see it because their greed had blinded them. Now let's travel to the Himalayas, to a paradise hidden among the world's highest peaks, Shangri-La. This one's different because Shangri-La was created by British author James Hilton in his 1933 novel Lost Horizon. It was fiction from the start, but Hilton didn't invent Shangri-La out of thin air. He based it on real Tibetan Buddhist legends and possibly a real hidden valley. Tibetan Buddhism speaks of Shambhala, a hidden kingdom where enlightened masters preserve ancient wisdom. It's described as a valley surrounded by snow-capped mountains, accessible only to those pure of heart. Sound familiar? Here's where it gets real. There actually are hidden valleys in the Himalayas, isolated by geography and protected by extreme altitude. And one of them matches the description almost perfectly. The Yarlung Tsangpo Grand Canyon in Tibet, the world's deepest canyon, contains microclimates that create subtropical paradises at high altitude. Explorers who ventured into the innermost gorges have described waterfalls, lush forests, and valleys that seem completely cut off from the outside world. Buddhist monasteries in these remote regions have preserved texts, practices, and knowledge for over 1,000 years, deliberately isolated from outside influence. Some monasteries were so remote they weren't discovered by Western explorers until the 20th century. But perhaps the most compelling evidence is this. In 2004, Chinese and Indian researchers confirmed the existence of a massive waterfall deep in the Yarlung Tsangpo Canyon that had been rumored for decades but never verified. The local Tibetans knew about it all along. They just never felt the need to tell outsiders. Shangri-La might be fiction, but the hidden valleys that inspired it, those are very, very real. Let's head north now, far north, to the edge of the ancient Greek world and beyond. Hyperborea, the land beyond the north wind. A paradise where the sun never set, where people lived for 1,000 years, and where Apollo himself would retreat during winter months. Greek historians like Herodotus mentioned Hyperborea as if it were an actual place, located somewhere north of Scythia, which would place it in the Arctic Circle or beyond. Completely impossible, right? No ancient civilization could survive that far north. Except, we keep finding evidence that suggests otherwise. In the 1970s, Soviet archaeologists discovered the Archeum site in the Ural Mountains, a Bronze Age settlement dated to around 2000 BCE with sophisticated astronomical alignments and advanced metallurgy. The site showed evidence of a culture that understood celestial movements with remarkable precision. Then in 2019, satellite imagery revealed massive geoglyphs in Kazakhstan, visible only from the air, created by a culture we barely understand. Some of these earthworks date back over 8,000 years. But the most intriguing evidence comes from Kola Peninsula in northwestern Russia, where researchers have found pyramids, yes, pyramids, that some claim are older than the Egyptian ones. The official scientific community disputes the dating, but the structures exist. Ancient Greek writers also described Hyperboreans as worshippers of Apollo who had deep connections to Delphi. Interestingly, amber trade routes from the Baltic Sea to the Mediterranean were well established in the Bronze Age. The Greeks definitely had contact with far northern peoples. Could Hyperborea have been a Greek misunderstanding of real northern cultures? Civilizations that seemed impossibly advanced for their harsh environment? The midnight sun really does occur in the Arctic. People really do live there and have for thousands of years. And we're only beginning to understand how sophisticated circumpolar ancient cultures actually were. Maybe Hyperborea wasn't paradise. Maybe it was just people surviving and thriving in conditions the Greeks thought were impossible. Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon supposedly died searching for it in Florida, the Fountain of Youth, a spring that grants eternal life. But like El Dorado, this legend has roots that run deeper than European fantasies. Indigenous peoples across the Caribbean and Florida told stories of healing waters with miraculous properties. And you know what? They were absolutely right. Florida sits on top of one of the world's largest aquifer systems. The state has over 700 freshwater springs, many with unique mineral compositions. Some of these springs maintain a constant 72-degree temperature year-round and contain dissolved minerals that have genuine therapeutic properties. Silver Springs, for example, has the highest concentration of naturally occurring silver ions of any water source in North America. Silver has antimicrobial properties. Ancient peoples might have noticed that wounds healed better when washed in certain springs. The Timucua people, who inhabited Florida when the Spanish arrived, absolutely used specific springs for healing rituals. Spanish records from the 1500s document indigenous guides taking sick colonists to particular springs for treatment. But the real fountain of youth might have been even simpler: clean water. European explorers in the 1500s were drinking brackish water, beer, and wine that were often contaminated. Scurvy, dysentery, and bacterial infections were constant companions. When they encountered Florida's crystal-clear, mineral-rich spring water, the health benefits would have seemed miraculous. People probably did feel younger and healthier after drinking from these springs, not because of magic, but because they were finally properly hydrated and consuming water free from the bacteria that had been slowly poisoning them. The Fountain of Youth exists. There are hundreds of them in Florida. They just don't work the way the legend promised. Now for something stranger. Lemuria, the lost continent supposedly located in the Indian or Pacific Ocean, predating Atlantis and housing the root race of humanity. This one started as science, believe it or not. In the 1860s, zoologist Philip Sclater noticed that lemurs existed in Madagascar and India, but nowhere in between. To explain this, he proposed that a now sunken landmass once connected these regions. He called it Lemuria. Then plate tectonics was discovered, and we realized lemurs simply spread before the continents drifted apart. Problem solved, right? Except Lemuria had already escaped into mysticism, theosophy, and alternative history. And weirdly, some of the underlying observations weren't entirely wrong. Sundaland is real. During the last ice age, sea levels were 400 feet lower, and Southeast Asia extended much farther. What are now islands were connected by vast plains and forests. Modern Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Indonesia were part of one enormous landmass. When the Ice Age ended around 12,000 years ago, rising seas swallowed an area the size of India. Entire ecosystems, and potentially human civilizations, vanished under the South China Sea. In recent years, fishermen have pulled up stone tools, pottery, and other artifacts from the ocean floor. Underwater archaeological surveys have found evidence of human habitation in areas that have been submerged for millennia. Was there an advanced civilization on Sundaland? Probably not in the way mystics imagine. But were there human cultures, coastal settlements, and trade networks that were completely erased by post-Ice Age flooding? Absolutely. Lemuria as a mystical continent is fiction. But a massive inhabited landmass sinking beneath the Indian Ocean? That actually happened. Finally, let's venture into the Arabian desert to find the Atlantis of the sands, Iram of the pillars. The Quran mentions Iram as a city of lofty pillars whose people defied God and were destroyed. For centuries, Islamic scholars debated whether Iram was literal or metaphorical. Then in 1992, NASA satellite imaging detected something impossible: the ghost of an ancient trade route beneath the sands of Oman, leading to a location that matched historical descriptions of Iram. When archaeologists arrived, they found Ubar, a fortress city with 8 towers that controlled the frankincense trade route. Radiocarbon dating confirmed the site was destroyed around 300 CE, possibly by a sinkhole that swallowed portions of the city when its limestone foundation collapsed. The discovery was stunning because it matched the legendary descriptions almost exactly: a wealthy trading city with impressive towers, destroyed suddenly and abandoned, buried by the desert. But here's what makes this discovery so important. It validated oral histories that academics had dismissed as myth. The Bedouin tribes of the region had always known where Ubar was. They'd preserved the stories for over 1,500 years. Western archaeologists just didn't believe them until satellite technology confirmed what the locals had been saying all along. This is the pattern we see over and over. Legends dismissed as fantasy turn out to contain kernels of historical truth. Stories passed down through generations preserve memories of real places, real events, real catastrophes. So what does this all mean? 7 legendary locations, 7 real-world origins. Atlantis was probably Santorini. El Dorado was Lake Guatavita and the Muisca civilization. Shangri-La echoes Tibet's hidden valleys. Hyperborea might preserve memories of northern Bronze Age cultures. The Fountain of Youth was Florida's springs. Lemuria was Sundaland, and Iram of the Pillars was Ubar. Every single one of these myths was rooted in something real. And that raises an uncomfortable question. What other legends are we dismissing right now that future generations will prove were true? The ancient world was far more connected, far more sophisticated, and far more aware of its own geography than we've given it credit for. These weren't primitive peoples making up stories around campfires. They were preserving actual historical memories in the only way available to them, through myth. So the next time you hear an ancient legend, don't dismiss it. Ask yourself, what truth might be hidden inside this story? Because history doesn't repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes. And sometimes those rhymes echo from places we thought only existed in our imagination. What other myths do you think might be based on real locations? Drop your theories in the comments. I want to hear them. And if you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel is for. Subscribe, hit the bell, and let's keep exploring the places where history and legend collide. Until next time, keep questioning everything. I'll see you in the next video.